Hello, my name is Luke George, and I'm having conversations with courageous educators. My guest today is Eliza Dadson. Through her business, ADHD With Me, Eliza works with educators by supporting them with real ADHD strategies to engage and impact students with ADHD. Eliza spent 10 years studying and applying her knowledge in the classroom. She walks the talk. And during her workshop, participants have often said how engaging and relevant her material is. I'm super excited to dig deeper into the world of ADHD and shine a light on the invisible. Welcome, Eliza Dadson. Hello, welcome everyone. I am so happy to be speaking to Eliza Dadson today. Eliza,
hello, how are you going?
Eliza is an amazing educator that has not only taken education to the next level, that's how I feel, is that during her time as a teacher, she actually did extra time looking into behaviour, ADHD, and from that she has done some amazing work and done some amazing workshops. So I'm really interested to drill down into what ADHD is all about and how we can actually help educators work with this particular space. And Eliza's going to tell us all sorts of amazing things, so we'll just let her do the talking and I'll just do the listing. All right, welcome along,
Eliza Dadson. Thank you. No pressure, just do the talking. I can do that.
Yes, you can. So let's always start at the beginning, because I think this is actually quite an important part of the story of your delve into ADHD. So tell me about your family life, how you grew up, who was part of it.
Okay, so growing up, I'm from a big family. I've got 4 brothers and 3 of them have ADHD. My dad also has ADHD, but back in the day that was just considered, he left school early, couldn't read, he had dyslexia. It wasn't understood or considered. My dad is highly successful now, but my journey kind of started in this upbringing of ADHDers.
So the interesting part about Eliza is that when she was growing up with these with her family and these three brothers with ADHD, of course, she sees it as the norm, and she just learnt strategies of working with these beautiful brothers. And I think that's where it actually all started. Do you think that was like a little piece of your wonderment of working with young people that have different learning capabilities? Do you think that's part of your journey into teaching, etc.?
Well, I think for me, my norm was like schedules, structure, healthy eating. I mean, plastic cheese was a treat back then. So my norm wasn't the norm, and I didn't realise that till I got older. But what I did know is that my brothers were misunderstood at school, and as a child, a sister of my brothers, I felt for them because I felt like they were misunderstood. And so I think I was inspired by changing the narrative for ADHDers, because I knew my brothers inside out, and they weren't able to utilise their best skills, I suppose, because they were misunderstood with this condition that was also misunderstood back in the 90s.
Yeah. Now, you went into teaching, so you've been teaching for 17 years, and part of that 17 years, you actually took 10 years just to do more interesting study and get a deeper feel for basically students that just had a learning difficulty. Would that be right? Or were you looking a bit more into the social side of it? What was your interest in this space?
Well, I'm really interested in whole child development and just brains, really, like looking at the way children develop and the best way to support them in that. For 10 years during my teaching time, I went and did some extra study because I just wanted to be able to not just deliver curriculum, but deliver curriculum with the understanding of the science behind each child's brain and how to essentially access that to support them in learning and being their best self. I studied with Claire Orange and did the Highway Heroes Associate Trainer Program, which looks at solution-focused positive psychology and behavioural interventions for kids. And then I went off to Sydney and studied with Lynn Worsley, so that's looking at resilience and the way children can develop based off not just family, but looking at outside sources that then lead them to the choices that they then make for their future and how they develop resilience. And it wasn't until I discovered the ADHD Academy that was the piece à la résistance of my study. That was the most amazing experience for me because I thought I knew ADHD, having my brothers and then having 17 years of different children with it. And of course, I haven't mentioned my amazing husband. I married ADHD just to really get the, the full scope. But once I did that coaching certification, the science that I learnt about the depth of ADHD and the complexity of it not only blew my mind, but I thought this is what I want to now do is I need to share this with teachers and not just give solution-focused strategies, but I need to give them this science so they can really access what's going on for each individual child and they can then support them, because currently in our education system there's no real solid support around ADHD in the sense that it's not funded, but also at the university level it's not really explored unless you go into a specialty and look at learning difficulties. So it's just not really covered yet. So I thought that's what I want to do. I can help and support and change these guys' lives. And I'm inspired by my family and my husband. So that's what happened.
That's what happened. So we've got still more to go. Now, that was interesting because not during this, and I'm loving it that it's during the 17 years that you did your 10 years worth of study and really got involved and dug deeper into ADHD and learning. But I think the next amazing thing is that you actually then applied, like you were literally getting information and applying. So you're back and forth with resilience, you were looking at the highway heroes, and you're applying, which in turn then you would have then tweaked and mastered and actually learned what worked and what didn't work. So that's amazing in regards to that highway heroes. You not only were studying, you're immersing yourselves, but you're also tweaking some of the things that you're doing with the highway heroes. Can you tell me a little bit about a time where, or an example of where you changed the way you did things and it made a massive difference, as an example?
Yeah, definitely. So doing the Highway Heroes program gave me a real scope into the fact that kids are coming to school not necessarily with the social skills that we expect that they can have. So something as simple as when I had my little year ones, what I learnt in the Highway Heroes program is some children don't even know how to join into a game because they don't have the skills, and the only thing they know to say is, "Hi, can I play?" And what that does is it empowers the child to answer yes or no, and the child that says no, the person that asks the question loses their power.
Yeah.
So we want to teach kids to be a bit more confident and a bit more, I suppose, change the way they ask questions, which means they have more acceptance into those social scenarios. So something I taught my kids was, or one of my teachers would know this language, exiting tickets, was before leaving the mat, prior to a break, I might say, "All right, guys, we're off to recess. I want to know 3 answers to this question, and that is, how are you going to join in today's game?" So some kids might say, "I'm going to say that soccer game looks great. I'm going to join in after the next goal."
Yeah.
Some children might say, "Hey, I've got marbles. You've got marbles. I'm going to bring mine to the sand pit." And then some kids might say, "You know that game we played yesterday? Let's do it again today in this way or that way." So it's a bit less about can I play yes and no and get rejection, and a bit more about resilience and just having some dialogue around play, because we assume kids have that, but actually they don't necessarily have those skills when they come to school.
Yeah, I can see how that fits with that resilience, because, I mean, we as adults, we're always asking questions, and there is that fear of rejection, for sure.
Yeah.
Yet if we learn it as young people to be able to say, don't give your power away, and actually have dialogue so you can actually get in and be part of the game, and then show you that you can be part of the game as well and join in. That then just keeps building and building and building. So as adults, we can actually have better conversations and more fluid. So I'm loving that little start bit. And it must have been quite I suppose, a light bulb moment, or one of those joy moments where the little people start talking like that, and all you've done is just change a strategy in your classroom, and it just makes another difference, and layer upon layer. So you must have, over these 10 years that you're getting even more engrossed, I think that's what brings you up to the skill set that you've now got. It's not only that you've lived with and be with you around your siblings with ADHD, you've actually taught in your teaching career, you've been teaching, then you've actually put ADHD strategies and highway hero strategies, etc.
You're married. Your husband is a ADHDer, and that's your terms.
Yep.
So I suppose that's that big move where you then went. There's a piece in here, and then there's a science of ADHD about the brain. So is that what sort of brings you to this point, as you told me the other day about ikigai? It's like your purpose. This is what you're built for. Is that what lights you up?
Well, 100%, Luke. Now, before I get lit up and share that, those of you with ADHD will be able to hear that background lawnmower. So I'm just going to quickly close my door because it might take away from this podcast. I'll be back.
I suppose that's the joy of doing live telecasts, and so that lawnmower was actually in the background. We had to move from where we were, so we don't want any ADHDers turning off our podcast because it's all about you guys. So your ikigai, your purpose, tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I love what I do. My goal is to change the way all ADHDers feel about themselves. That's the purpose. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Studying and applying the strategies and being able to see in action what they look like was really powerful. So I'm glad that I did the study and also put the strategies in to watch the way that they got received, because that means now when I go out and do workshops, these strategies are trialled and tested, and I know that they're going to impact and support and help teachers to really understand ADHD.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is my ikigai. I'm so excited to be doing it. And my PD is, I think it's very engaging because I was there. I was a teacher, I know.
You're in the trenches,
That's
and you
right.
know what it's like.
Yeah.
And I reckon before we get deeper into that place, I'm interested because I know that there'll be people listening and educators saying, "Wow, how did you get out of teaching?" Because you actually left teaching, like you're no longer in the employment of the education department.
Yeah.
You're actually out on your own, which I always find that's a big leap. 17 years, and then you've got to go out on your own and you've got to do the selling, etc. What did that feel like, and how did you get to that point, or have you already revealed how you got to that point?
Oh, it was scary, definitely. Lots and lots of thinking. As I said, that 10 years, I knew for 10 years that I wanted to do something else. I just couldn't work out what it was exactly till I found the ADHD course. So yeah, it was scary, but it was about time. I felt like I was supporting these, 24 children each year and really helping their families understand social emotional development and those with ADHD to support them. But I wanted to get to a greater group and help larger groups of people. And I knew, to be honest, at the time I was only one of 3 teachers that had done this ADHD coach certification. So I thought there's definitely room to grow this and help more teachers. So I suppose it was the purpose and the passion that helped me step out. I mean, I was also 1 year off long service leave.
Whoa, you're giving that away? Oh my gosh.
But I thought it's now or never. And I also had the support of my family, and I mean, even my husband, I'll never forget. So as I said, he was an ADHDer. I was studying and he'd sort of just be in the background and listening into what I was doing, and he'd say things like, I do that, I do that. And he really resonated with, when I was studying, he was really resonating, going, so hang on a minute, ADHD is not just this, have a pill and have you taken your pill today. It's actually a neurobiological complex condition that really impacts so many people in our life. And so when I was studying, he really learned a lot about himself. And in fact, when I gave him the manuals, I said to him, right, I've got my exams coming up, ask me anything. And what I loved was he was like, because he was dyslexic, he literally started reading the manual and he goes, whoa, I do this, I do that. Oh, shivers. It's like this manual was written on me. And I think that was amazing for him to realise that this is a real thing. And in fact, he started reading the manuals, right, which he doesn't even read books.
Oh, right.
So he really resonated with what I learnt, and it just gave me, I thought to myself, look at how much he's learnt being in this space, so how much can I now teach others to support them to understand themselves?
It was like affirmation, getting an affirmation from someone that you really love and respect.
Yeah.
But there was a time that you were going down south, and then you had a conversation where it just was
light bulbs,
real light bulbs.
Yeah.
Because this is, I feel like, the turning point for you. Because there's lots of thoughts there.
you've been thinking about it, been studying it, but there's still that tipping point where you've got
That's
to
right.
move out. So what was that conversation like in the motor vehicle going down south?
Well, it happened to be a Tuesday, and Dado and I were driving down south, and I was studying and doing my thing and explaining what I'm going to do. And typical ADHD is we love them, right? But sometimes they don't exactly hear all the pieces. Anyway, he just turns to me and he goes, hang on a minute. So what you're telling me is you're going to leave teaching and you're going to teach teachers how to teach kids like me. And I'm like, yes. And then he goes, whoa, that's just such a good idea. Like, he was so excited. He goes, that's going to be game changing. That's going to be so powerful. And he got really excited. And it's like, that's what I'd been trying to say for a while, but he didn't realize that's what the aim, the goal was. So he was so excited, and he was pretty good at, I suppose, determining good and bad ideas. And even he was like, that is an amazing idea. That's it. You know, I'll obviously 100% support you. It's time, let's do it. So he was already supporting me along the way, but I think it just took him realising that I'm collecting all this information to use, to support, and to change the way we teach these kids, which is going to change lives. And it was
100%.
just that aha that he had down south that always stays with me, because that was the moment that he was like, yes, let's do this, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
trigger was pulled, and you've now been out for a year in 2024,
Yeah.
and you've spoken to literally thousands of teachers already. So let's dig a little bit deeper into ADHD, because I know that's what you're really itching to get onto. So what is ADHD? How do you describe it? Is it as simple as a sentence, or what's your definition of ADHD?
Well, my mum would describe it as a chemical imbalance. So when we were kids, my brothers got paid basically to wake up and to do anything really, because that's the thing, you need to use currencies to motivate ADHDers. Chemical imbalance of the brain, but now that I've done the science, I know that it's a chemical imbalance of norepinephrine and dopamine. Essentially, it's like, the best way to describe it is, I like Ned Halliwell's description. So it's like having the power of a Ferrari, but with bicycle brakes. So you're fast, you're creative, you're excited, you're on the go. You don't always turn the right corners, right? Because your brakes are like bicycle brakes. So you just can't really slow down and forward plan and problem solve continuously. But you can problem solve in the moment, but you don't always think before you act. So, I mean, it's a pretty complex neurobiological condition that is hereditable or hereditary. But I just kind of like, in my workshops, I kind of describe it as that Ferrari theory with bicycle brakes. And so our job as teachers is to strengthen the brakes.
Nice. Strengthen the brakes.
Yeah.
But ADHD stands for attention
Deficit hyperactivity disorder. Yeah.
So the attention deficit part of it, so when you're talking about the Ferrari going really fast, the bicycle brakes, when we're going really fast, do we have the right attention? Or are we driving really fast in the Ferrari with not a lot of attention or very focused attention? Just because I've got the Ferrari with the hyperactivity part, but the attention deficit, is it because of the cause of we going so fast? And is that how we got the attention deficit part of it?
The deficit part is about neurochemicals. So if something's boring and you're neurotypical, you have enough neurochemicals to sustain your focus on it and kind of get through it.
Yeah, through it.
But when you're ADHD, if something's boring, it's really hard just to even start or think about starting the idea, because boredom is actually emotionally almost triggering for you. So the deficit, I would say, is that hard stuff is... Well, ADHDers can do hard stuff, especially if they're interested, but the mundane, boring tasks actually are a lot harder for ADHDers just to get started. And a nice way I sum it up in my workshops is the strengths ADHDers have are stronger than neurotypicals. They're often better at things than other kids or more creative than other adults, and their level of norm is like excellent, right? But then the weaknesses are weaker. So getting organised for an event might take a lot of cognitive energy for an ADHDer because they think about everything, whereas a neurotypical person will just get ready in that moment, problem solve as they go, and head out the door. So it's like, the best way to describe that is the hyper focus is whatever they're interested on, they'll focus on. But some of that mundane, boring stuff that has to happen each day is actually really tough for ADHDers to execute and to do. And that's where the self-esteem piece can come in, because they can't always get started. and the feedback they get is, well, why can everyone else get organised for, say, work or on time to the gym or go to the shop and buy what they intended to buy, and I can't? So, again, the passion behind what I do is to teach what's really going on so we can ensure that their self-esteem, confidence and self-worth is where it needs to be, because ADHD is not bad, it's not good, it is, and what it is what you work with.
Yeah. Like these are the cards that we've been handed. How do we work with those cards?
Yeah.
And I think it's those, just as you were saying, in regards to the weaknesses. So they've got heaps of strength.
Yeah.
Which is something that as educators we can use,
Yes.
knowing those strengths and creativity,
Yeah.
but at the same time there will be weaknesses as well.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the hard part, is we most probably look at the weaknesses, like you were saying, going, why is it going to take so long? Why do they? Whereas what you're saying is that let's identify those weaknesses and then be able to put in language, actions, routines that can actually help that person move forward.
Yeah.
So what would be an example of helping someone? And I can imagine if they think in the extent of excellence and how big this could be, and most people just go, okay, well, I just pack up my bag and leave, but they're thinking of grande.
Yeah.
How do we bring them into making it so I can just pack up and leave? Not that their brain will say that, but how do we get them to move that space so that they can eventually move into leaving? Or is that not necessarily the objective?
Well, that would be an adult outside of a school setting, but if it's in a school setting and it's the objective is to get some spelling done and the spelling's boring, you would forward plan the child. So you're putting ideas into their mind before they get on a negative thinking loop, thinking about how they can't do it and how it's boring. So that forward planning might sound like what's possible in the next 5 minutes. So again, there's no pressure, but it's just put them on a different track of, I have to get started on this boring task. Well, what is possible in 5 minutes? So it's just a lot of the teaching strategies that I introduce are about deflecting from ADHD as going on a negative thought pattern, because that negative thought pattern is essentially regulating their thinking. So we want to put them on a positive thought pattern. And it's even, I can't wait to see your first word. I can't wait to see your fantastic printing. It's just put an idea in their mind and they'll get started instead of, all right, everyone, time to start.
Yeah.
Because that's almost empty.
Yeah. So what I'm saying there is, rather than me, that self-story that I tell myself, bigger than Ben-Hur, the teachers actually allowed me to go, this is the first time. What's your first word? I can do a first word. And all of a sudden, what I was thinking about is now brought to the first word or first sentence. And depending on the relationship and you understand the little person, you can now see how big that task can be.
Yes.
Or how short it has to be, how small it has to be for this person.
Yeah.
And so these conversations by adults around the little person actually helps them to just keep triggering back in. So it's that's sort of like they start to maybe change their story to, rather than this big, what's my first word?
Yeah.
Is that something that you're working towards as well as the little person? Can they learn that routine by giving themselves smaller tasks?
Well, what we know is our neurotypical kids are constantly problem solving and thinking about things as they're thinking ahead. But our ADHDers are always just in the moment. So they're not really using that hindsight and foresight at that young age. So by us forward planning with kids, it means that next time they do spelling, in their emotional memory, they remember, hey, last time I did spelling, I did X, Y, Z. So then as a teacher, what you would do if it's spelling for the next week, what you have to do is two things. A, let them use a different colour pencil, maybe for the vowels, because that's not the same as the last task. And remember, boredom is ADHD is kryptonite. And second thing you would do is go, remember last week, what was possible in the 5 minutes? Well, this week, I'm going to give you 5 minutes again, but you get to use a red pencil. So what are we doing? We're creating that positive memory, but we're breaking the steps down, lessening the cognitive load, which then supports executive functioning. And executive functioning is something ADHDers have a tough time with. So it's essentially just double positive, but then they remember each time they do spelling, it's not a negative. It's about changing the way the memory is stored for ADHDers.
Yeah. And when we started your story about ADHD, is one of the other big part about it is self-esteem. And it's like anything, isn't it? Like you've tried it, it doesn't work. Or I remember as a kid, when I went to high school and I did my, the big essay, and it just came back with red crosses, red crosses through my words, and then red, this should be better, blah, blah, blah. And undiagnosed dyslexic was like, oh, okay. So how do you think, as soon as they said, let's write an essay, my thoughts immediately were just, oh, this isn't going to go well. So away we go, would attempt it. And at that stage, it was basically, the strategy was, we'll just show them all their mistakes and they will get better.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, all it was doing was reinforcing that I make mistakes.
That's correct.
In which case, I didn't get better.
Yeah.
And I actually started to not resent, I needed to still push myself. So it comes back to that my thought process was already, the story was in my head. Essay, oh my gosh, red pens. And what you're telling us is that with ADHDers, actually a lot of the work is getting that positive story to remind them, so we don't go down the loop pathway of, oh goodness me.
Yes.
It's actually saying, remember what you did last time.
Yeah.
You did it well. This is what you did in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
This is a story I can start telling myself.
Correct.
But last time I could do 5 minutes, so 5 minutes is a good. And then once I've done 5, I can do 10. And once I've done 10. So it's this continual reminder that they just need that extra bit of positive. But it's smaller, isn't it? Because it's not as if we don't give positive to children.
Yeah.
But for ADHDs, we've got to give them that starting point, so they can get that bit first.
We've also got to smother them in positive, to be honest, because a lot of the feedback ADHD has received throughout their life is negative, and it's just that subtle negative. Thanks for handing in your work, Eliza, but you forgot your name again. Thanks everyone for walking down. I love how everyone's using walking feet. James, why are you rapping as you head down to the mat? Or why are you making noises while you're working? Everyone's working quietly, and so.
Boom.
So it's just that they receive 20,000 negative pieces of feedback from the ages of kindy to year 12 compared to their neurotypical mates. And so I'm very consciously aware that in my workshops, we really need to consider so much more positive, because they're already getting enough negative feedback, and it's just gentle reminders, in our opinion. People aren't being mean to them, but they don't need to be reminded they forgot their name on the worksheet.
Yeah. So that's a matter of going, thanks for handing it in, Eliza.
Yeah. Leave it. Yeah.
Just leave it there.
Just pop in the name on for them.
Yeah. And then you can pick up the pen and just write their name on and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Because maybe just handing it in, whereas beforehand that was always a bit difficult. So it sounds like they don't get the natural, 3 positives and 1 negative. So it sounds like ADHD is just positive. Just keep looking at the positives and find that positive.
Yes.
I like that idea of not being reminded. That's right. I don't do, and then there's my story.
That's right.
Oh God, am I going to put my name on the bit of paper, etc.
And another piece to that is what we know in the science is our ADHD is have a more higher sort of prevalence of having that rejection sensitivity dysphoria piece that comes and sits in as part of the story. And what that's about is they receive that feedback at the end of each task so often that that's what they are wiring to hear.
Oh.
So it's like, all right, everyone, come and line up at the door. No, we're not running. Like, they're used to that. So if you drop that out and you maybe use some humour instead, like flip the narrative, they're not going to be wired up listening, waiting for that rejection piece. And so therefore they won't have they'll start thinking about, it will impact their self-worth more positively, but it lessens the chances that they're going to develop that rejection sensitivity as well.
Yeah. I'm sort of picturing that as well, is a teacher taking on board strategies and knowing, okay, I've got so many ADHDs, whether they're diagnosed or not, but that it's a matter of just noticing and then thinking, oh, maybe I better just bring back those negative comments, even though they might be felt as if they're helpful or good intention. Yeah. But it can spark something in there. So there's not a need for it. It's maybe just as that little person's getting up, just walk with them.
Yes. Yeah.
Rather than everybody get up knowing full well that little Harry's going to run, maybe do the old proximity, and as you give your instruction, walk with Harry. and then allow him through.
Yeah.
Is that sort of
You can do
just
that.
being conscious of it?
Yeah, you can do that. You can use humour. They love humour. So another one that I often suggest, which is just so easy, is you might say, all right, everyone, we're going to head to library. So the kids go to stand up and exit the class. Now, I don't know, Ryan's going to get up and throw his chair in and push it hard and make noise. And you know that because that's his past pattern. So what you do is, as you say, all right, everyone, we're going to get up and we're going to head to library. You forward plan Ryan. So you say, Ryan, I love the way you were just about to get up and push your chair in quietly. I'm so proud of you. Now, Ryan's going to look at you and almost laugh / roll his eyes and go, well, I wasn't going to do that. But you've just actually put like a fork in his road of behaviour and you've directed him to positive. So then he's like, well, I'm going to get the attention that I was requiring, but it's positive attention. So it's just using that humour as well, because you know the behaviours that will come up. So you stop it by forward planning.
Yeah, it's also taken a lot of time and energy working with disruptive behaviour, not on purpose, of course, because that takes a whole lot of more different energy, etc. By going down that pathway. So by just throwing in a few positives, and as we said, there's more than the neurotypical is actually you're actually saving yourself time and energy, and it's just being really super aware of that space. And you've got your Ryans and Susans and Marys and Lukes, etc., all in the same room. And that's just like, it's not another thing to do. It's just a thing to do. It's the way that you then becoming more of an effective teacher.
100%. It's honestly, it's going to support you because you're not going to see as much negative behaviour as you used to. Because the dysregulated kids are usually there's something else going on. But by forward planning or front loading or finding positive, it eliminates the negative emotional dysregulation that you see more often when you've given that subtle feedback. So yeah, it does actually support positive behaviour in the class and eliminate the negative.
So you've been in this space for a year. As I said, you've done a fair few workshops with schools. What sort of feedback are you getting from some of the schools that have had you in for a few times, from principal or teachers? Are they also doing what Eliza Dadson did, was actually implementing and seeing a difference? Are you getting that call back? Are they people actually saying, I've tried it and it worked, or are they, I tried it and it didn't work, so that's it? So what sort of feedback are you getting from there?
I mean, we love positive feedback because that's that produces positive neurochemicals. So it's been going. The feedback's been fantastic because, as I've explained to you, a lot of it's about dialogue. It's about delivery. I'm not creating an extra workload. So, and they're trialling and testing these strategies. Obviously, I don't want to reveal them all on the podcast at the moment, but the ones that they're using, they're seeing the impact and they're allowing themselves as well just to smile and find the humour in the day a little bit more and see the child for their creative spark instead of seeing what they saw before, which was the wiggling, moving, jiggling. And side note, that wiggling and moving is a processing modality. And when ADHD are concentrating, that wiggling leg is them creating dopamine to focus on your delivery of curriculum. So if you want them to sit still, they're actually going to not be able to absorb as much learning. Right. So just little tips like that, teachers have gone, I can relax a bit and deliver and allow them to be a little bit more free when they're listening, because their listening style is actually different to other kids. So the feedback's been fantastic, and my workshops, I feel they're engaging, and I consider the fact that even as adults, our attention network's 20 minutes. So when you're in my workshops, you're not going to be sitting down for the whole hour because I know you won't be able to absorb the learning. So I bring in strategies that I use in class settings into the adult workshops so that adults can see and feel what it's like. So I feel like that really helps them to understand it.
Absolutely, it would. So let's talk about the strengths. What are the amazing things that most probably we don't talk about enough? I think we, culturally, or we're getting into a better space, but ADHD was, oh gosh, they're always so fast and doing all those sorts of things. But you were talking about strengths as well. So how do we harness the strengths, or what are some of the strengths that we can look out for?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, creativity, thinking outside the box. They're very artistic, they're funny, they can be super organised as well, or they can be disorganised, one or the other. Very practical, very hands-on, they're kinesthetic, they're intuitive, they're emotional learners. They'll be the first to know you're not feeling well. They'll also be one of the first to know something's going on outside of the classroom, and they'll let you know. They've got excellent sense of, the senses are also heightened when you have ADHD. But yeah, I just explain them as their joy. They bring joy and happiness and humour. And you have to understand that their executive functioning is not the same as the other kids at the same age group. So what we perceive as easy for them is actually hard. So again, going back to breaking down the steps, it really makes a difference.
Yeah, just those small bits make a difference. The do you see? I mean, why are we talking about this so much more now? Is it because 10 years ago we didn't record as much, or it wasn't researched as much, this sort of space in ADHD? But now I can, since COVID, and I'd like to hear your why ADHD is in that space. Do you think there's more ADHD, when we were young kids, or is it just because they weren't labelled, or is it now that society's changed and we have got more ADHD? What's your sort of thoughts on that?
Well, that's a pretty big question. It's a culmination of a fair few things.
Okay.
So if we think about COVID and 2020, all of a sudden people weren't going to work, they weren't getting in their car and creating a morning routine and leaving the house. They were starting new hobbies, which included video recording themselves, finding it hard to make a decision and or get started. So what COVID did in 2020 was absolutely explode awareness, and I suppose ADHD, the trajectory of diagnosis really grew from 2020 onwards. So prior to then, a wait list in Australia was about 3 months for an adult. And after 2020, an adult was about, 2021 was 9 months, and now we're looking at 2 years. So COVID revealed that there are a lot of people in our community with ADHD, but they didn't know because they had coping mechanisms. They had to leave their home to go and be at work and be productive, and then go to the shop and then come home and then run the house. But being stuck in the house all day meant that was a black hole of awareness. So that's one reason ADHD is more talked about. Technology, that's really impacted our kids and our society. So when you're gaming or you're on a device, you're getting constant consequences, positive feedback, negative feedback, it's constant. So that impacts your ability to be patient. It impacts your frontal cortex, your creativity. So a lot of kids now that are gaming a lot, it's actually impacting their creativity and their ability to wait and be patient and even experience boredom. So technology's had a real impact on behaviour, which can look like ADHD. And then the final piece is a lot of women have ADHD that went under the radar for many, many years because they're very good at masking. They call it the stealth diagnosis. So now that it's being more talked about and women are looking at more research that's around, they're noticing that they might actually have had it all along, or they've got some anxiety or some OCD behaviours or some depression, and they're looking into it, they've realised actually it's ADHD, been ADHD all along, but it kind of manifested, and they looked at other side, I suppose, the anxiety piece, instead of going back to, hang on, that's what was happening for me for my whole life. So between COVID, technology, and women, or the capacity to be able to execute the demands being put on us, that's why the conversation, I think, has grown so much. And neuroscience, because they can now scan brains and they can see what's going on. And so by looking at the actual piece of what's going on in the brain, they can also determine where the ADHD impacts which parts of the brain. So they've also got that science piece, which means they're writing more books, so more knowledge.
More knowledge. We've spoken about little people and teachers. Do you sort of work in that space of or know more about, or is it the same as working with adults, working with parents of ADHDs? How does that, is that a different world or pretty well similar?
It's different because we have to educate parents about how to support ADHD children and educate parents on the development of how it's going to look different and how that stuff that we perceive is easy is actually really tough for them. So it's different in terms of what I do is run workshops to support parents in, first of all, understanding how complex it is, and second of all, again, strategies to implement at home and in areas of their life that are difficult to support them in their growth. And then working with adults, again, is different because each profile of ADHD is different. So the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual, is a standardised assessment that we use to, or not we, that people use to look at the criteria of ADHD. And you've got to meet 6 out of 9 markers on either side. But actually, the new research that's come out of the ADD Institute in America is there's 100 markers
Wow.
of ADHD.
Wow. And we're
only,
looking at 6.
We're looking at 18.
18, okay.
So each profile, each person, every ADHD is different.
Wow.
So there's just so much to delve into about where the ADHD shows up for adults and how the support can be put in place to support them in moving with it and moving through it.
Boy, if there's 100 markers, and it must make it, there's not necessarily there'd be a generic, and a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about is understandable, but then it even goes even further than that. It can be even deeper. So those markers are, you don't hit every ADHD with one of your strategies. It's about understanding where they're at, so then we can cope with and work with.
Yeah.
Is it will it always be a space where we can get to manage it, or is it actually a space where it's just going to get worse?
Again, that's a pretty weighted question, because with the development of technology, everyone's getting worse. Everyone's getting distracted. Everyone's doing too many things at once. Everyone's not setting boundaries, coming home from work and turning off devices. That's impacting circadian rhythm. That's impacting sleep. Sleep means you're going to have more symptoms of ADHD. So I suppose that's a massive question. So if I simplify the answer, it would be more like the more knowledge we can deliver and practical solutions and practical strategies, the better understanding we can have moving forward with whether children have ADHD or don't have ADHD. So it's just, if we can get the knowledge out there and the understanding and the awareness, then we can support these little brains which turn into big brains, and everyone can learn to accept what it is that they have and do and move forward with it instead of feel ashamed by it.
Yeah. It always does come down to us as individuals taking action. So we've got the knowledge, but what am I going to do with that? And I find that's always the biggest question, especially in the space of mental fitness, which we work on. And we do make decisions. We need to make a decision to say, well, I'm not going to use that language anymore. I'm going to use this positive language. And I think to me, that's a big part of what we do, is giving that information out. But you do have to act on it and see the change, and then be the change that you want to see.
Yeah.
So that's what you did while you were teaching. You were implementing. You decided that you're going to do things differently, and you saw the change, and then that's what brought you to the position that you're in now.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing that it's all about management acceptance, but also implementation of things that actually work.
Yeah.
Of course, there's always there's some drugs that you can take that's been prescribed. What's your opinion about that? Is that something that, oh my gosh, my child's taking drugs, or is that part of the solution as well through science?
Well, through the science aspect, pills don't teach skills, but pills give kids a level playing field to be on the same playing field as their peers. So not all ADHDs need medication, but there are some children, i.e. my brother, who was 6 at the time in the 90s, who needed to be on Ritalin by the age of 6, because some ADHD is like a continuum. So my husband and my youngest brother, they had really extreme symptoms that visited them all the time, every day. Those are the kind of candidates that would benefit from being neurochemically supported with medication. But there's more to the solution than just medication.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to look at sleep, we've got to look at health, and that's food that's being eaten, and that's again about cognitive health, because there's no conclusive evidence on just ADHD and food, not enough anyway to talk about, but we know that cognitively you're going to be more healthy when you have better food in your diet and less sugar. We've got to look at at exercise as well. Exercise is super important for our ADHDers. And finally, education. That's 20% of the solution, is knowing what you can do to support, knowing what to let go of, and knowing how you can help. So medication's just one part of the piece of the puzzle.
That's good. That's good. And I'm glad you said it like that, in the sense that I'd say when ADHD first came into more of a light many years ago, it seemed to be ADHD drug. And now, what you're doing is saying, well, that's a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the education. So, there's drugs involved, but you're also doing these other things we can actually move away from that and start moving into this space.
Yeah.
So it is getting involved and taking responsibility, and as a parent and as an adult working with little people is being part of that solution and making decisions of how you're going to act with them.
Yeah,
these people.
because another piece to that answer that you just said is there are some people out in the world in their 30s now, and they essentially feel like when they were kids, it's like people would ask questions like, has he had his meds or has she had her meds? And they felt like the only way people could cope with them is if they had their meds.
Yeah,
so their relationship to ADHD was so negative.
Yeah,
and that's why it's
point.
important to bring out the positives, because that's how they feel. They feel like, oh, well, they're not medicated. No one wants to be around me. And that's, again, something to
self-esteem
consider. Yeah,
comes back into
self-esteem.
that.
Yeah.
It is an amazing world that you live in. And that's like, it's been a year and you've got plenty to go. You're on a big conference coming up, I know, that you're on. You've got plenty of workshops, etc. So, Eliza, it's been absolutely amazing speaking to you. You're obviously full of information, which is great, and I'm just loving it. You live with ADHD, as you're married an ADHD, you taught ADHD, and now you've actually got the science about it. So you are one expert that's going to be moving forward in the right direction. So thank you very much for coming on the conversation today.
Thank you for having me, Luke, and I look forward to seeing everyone when I'm at the workshops, and everyone enjoy your day.
No worries.
Wow. Thank you for listening or viewing the Conversations with Courageous Educators podcast. I hope you take something away that improves the best version of yourself more often. I'm passionate about education and supporting educators in the tough job of nurturing tomorrow's citizens. I follow this passion by delivering staff wellbeing workshops, middle leadership programs, and leadership coaching for educators. If you have 2 minutes and would like to know how mentally fit you are to handle the rigours of teaching, then visit my website, www.by-george.com.au. That was www.by-george.com.au. And complete the 2-minute mental fitness diagnostic, which produces a report that affirms your strengths and challenges your growth opportunities. There is a positive ripple effect when educators are the best version of themselves more often. If you believe this as well and would like to implement the change, then be a courageous educator and contact me for a conversation. My details are in the show notes, or email luke@bygeorge.com.au, and that's by-george.com.au. Continue being courageous. Thank you.